what like the eye test says in Natasha Cloud. But there's also the fact that people just or teams just don't really want to deal with the bullshit that comes along with Natasha Cloud. And look, at the end of the day, she's outspoken about everything. And people are like, oh yeah, they don't want to sign her because she's outspoken about one or two topics. No. She is absolutely outspoken about everything. And look, it's one of those things where it's like, even for example, like a Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham is...
Natasha Cloud's phone buzzed with the news she never expected to hear during the off-season. The New York Liberty were officially moving on, and suddenly, one of the most vocal veterans in the league was radioactive. No one wanted to touch her contract, and the reason why sends a chilling message to every player in the WNBA. It was not just about her shooting percentage or her defensive lapses on the court, it was the fact that, in the high-stakes era of the league, her specific brand of chaos is no longer seen as a gritty asset, but a massive liability that could end her career for good. She was left out in the cold while the league moved on.
It's one of those things where it's like, even for example, like a Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham is borderline not worth the drama. Like, except the difference is that she is an advanced stats darling. Like, she is an efficient shooter. She's not a horrifically awful team defender. And she doesn't go out of her way to, do stuff she's not capable of doing. Natasha Cloud is on Threads, hyping up Izzy Harrison, while she is getting into it with injuries. And I'm going to be real. Like,
the silence from front offices during free agency was deafening for a player who usually has so much to say to the media. For years, Natasha Cloud has been considered the heart and soul of her locker rooms, but the advanced stats now tell a story that GMs can no longer ignore. On paper, she has become one of the least efficient players in professional basketball history. When you combine those horrific numbers with a personality that refuses to be managed by a PR team, you get a recipe for disaster. She went from a championship piece to a player that teams were genuinely afraid to sign because of the baggage she carries.
Angel's hands, and then whatever happened during the game, Izzy Harrison decided to suplex her. And let's be very real. Was it a soft flagrant 2? No. I do feel like a lot of people are calling it a soft flagrant 2. Are fans of Caitlin Clark and have watched some of the stuff that's happened to Caitlin Clark and not be called flagrant 2. And I feel like because Caitlin Clark's been ref so badly, people are like, these other players should be ref badly. No, everyone should be ref okay. Caitlin having the worst whistle in the league is not a good thing. But yeah, so
we have to be real about what is happening in the WNBA right now, because the landscape has shifted overnight. The unbelievable influence of Caitlin Clark is not just about ticket sales and TV ratings, it is about a complete overhaul of how the league is perceived by the public. Suddenly, every move a veteran makes is under a massive microscope, and the old school grit that Cloud prides herself on is being rebranded as a total PR nightmare. The league is desperate to protect its new clean image, and players who stir the pot without having the elite stats to back it up are finding themselves on the chopping block.
There's no way a player would be doing that. Could you imagine? Like, this is Draymond type shit, but she's not as good as Draymond. Could you imagine if, I don't know, if after Sophie did the shit she did to JC Sheldon, and like, I think we can all understand, yes, flagrant 2, clearly a flagrant 2. Whether or not you believe Sophie deserved to go after JC Sheldon, it was clearly she clearly escalated the incident. And look, as a fan, you can say one thing. You can't as a player.
The discrepancy between what we see with our eyes and what the data says about Natasha Cloud is actually staggering. If you watch her play, you might see a leader and a floor general who is not afraid to get in an opponent's face, but look at the analytics, and it is a total nightmare. She has been called one of the worst players in the league by those metrics for several years running. Usually, a veteran can survive bad stats if they bring locker room stability, but Cloud brings the exact opposite. She brings a whirlwind of controversy that teams are starting to realize they simply do not need to deal with anymore.
The whole weird 80-foot Paige Becker situation. The K-pop stands for those two, but through no fault of their own, can be a bit of a nightmare. But the thing is that they're all worth the nightmare. Sophie Cunningham is as well. The difference is with Sophie Cunningham is that Sophie Cunningham is on the line. Is that she is a much more efficient player, and yeah, like Sophie is on the line of being worth it or not. And Sophie has the advantage.
Look at what happened on the social media app Threads recently, because it perfectly illustrates why GMs are terrified of signing her to a long-term deal. While the league was trying to manage the fallout of a physical altercation between Izzy Harrison and Angel Reese, Cloud was busy hyping it up for the world to see. She was not just watching from the sidelines, she was actively encouraging the kind of energy that led to a literal suplex on the court. It is one thing to be a tough player, but it is another to be a veteran leader publicly cheering for behavior that results in flagrant fouls and ejections.
We all know the advanced stats will make it seem like she's the worst player in the league. And then you've got her out there, I'm not going to say encouraging violence, because I don't think the suplex had happened by the time she had tweeted that she liked the energy, but like encouraged behavior that eventually escalated into a suplex. Like, that is what she did on Threads. And let's be real, these players, they got to get off Threads. They got to get off social media. They got to get social media managers. I don't care. There are people that do it. You don't even need a social media manager. I think every single team.
This is where the comparison to someone like Sophie Cunningham becomes so fascinating, and frankly frustrating for Cloud's remaining fans. Sophie is known for being a bit of a lightning rod herself, often finding herself in the middle of on-court drama and heated exchanges. But there is one massive difference that keeps Sophie employed and Cloud struggling to find her footing in the league. Sophie Cunningham is an advanced stats darling, she is an efficient shooter, a disciplined team defender, and she does not overextend herself. She provides a clear value on the court that makes her baggage worth the wait.
I don't care. There are people that do it. You don't even need a social media manager. I think every single team has to have an employee full-time that okays tweets and Threads posts, as in no matter what it is it's one of those things where you just have somebody that their job is just to read what you're tweeting and it's say yes or no, and if they say no, their decision's final. Players may be pissed, but it's like, nope, this is what you get me signed up to this organization. Teams should have that. They really should.
When the New York Liberty decided they did not want to keep Cloud back in October, it sent massive shockwaves through her entire camp. She went into free agency expecting a major bidding war for her services, but instead, she found a league that had suddenly grown very quiet. It is a harsh reality to face when you realize you are not the untouchable star you thought you were. The league is changing fast, and the tolerance for players who cause more headaches than they solve on the scoreboard is at an all-time low. It was a massive wake-up call that she seemingly decided to ignore entirely.
Especially with this guy being a shit show. Like, and that's the thing, like, it's not basketball reasons by Tash Cloud. It's not that she's an activist for certain things. It is that Tash Cloud is a PR, will cause a headache to a PR team. And you have to ask the question of, is she worth it? And at this point in Tash Cloud's career, she's old. She doesn't play defense really anymore. She fouls a lot. She's, again, advanced stats will tell you she's one of the worst players in the league. So, yeah, I'm going to be real. This type of thing is the reason why she was out of the league. Anyway, see.
The problem with being a pure nightmare to manage is that you have to be undeniably great to justify the stress. Look at players like Draymond Green in the NBA. He can get away with a lot because he is a foundational piece of a dynasty, but Natasha Cloud is not at that level of play anymore. She is an aging veteran whose defense has regressed, and whose foul rate is skyrocketing every single season. When your production drops, but your social media presence stays at 100%, you become an easy target for a front office looking to cut costs and avoid any unnecessary drama. The influence of the new rookie class, led by the incredible Caitlin Clark, has forced the WNBA to grow up much faster than anyone expected. Referees are calling games differently, and the league is under more pressure than ever to maintain a professional standard for new sponsors. In this new environment, Cloud's outspoken nature feels like a relic of a completely different era. She is out here arguing with fans on social media and posting cryptic messages about her zodiac sign, while the league is trying to secure billion-dollar TV deals. The disconnect is massive and potentially career-ending. We have to talk about that Izzy Harrison incident again, because it is the smoking gun for why teams are hesitant to commit to her. When Izzy suplexed Angel Reese, it was a moment that could have seriously injured one of the league's rising stars. Most veterans would try to de-escalate the situation, or at least stay quiet on social media. Cloud did the exact opposite. She posted that she liked that energy, essentially validating a move that was a clear flagrant 2. That is not just being outspoken, that is being a liability to the safety and reputation of the entire professional league. Imagine if a player in any other professional sport publicly cheered for a teammate escalating a fight into a dangerous wrestling move. They would be suspended, fined, and likely ostracized by their own front office immediately. But Cloud seems to think she is immune to those kinds of consequences. The reality is that she was unsigned for a very specific reason. Teams are looking at her social media feeds and seeing a player they simply cannot control. In a league that is finally getting the mainstream respect it deserves, being uncontrollable is the last thing a GM wants for their team. There is a growing sentiment that WNBA teams need to start hiring full-time social media managers for their veteran players. It sounds extreme, but look at the damage being done to team brands right now. Every time Cloud hits the post button, she is potentially alienating sponsors and new fans who are just discovering the sport. The disorganization within some of these organizations is the only reason she has been able to get away with it for this long. But as the money gets bigger, the leash is getting a lot shorter for everyone involved in the league, regardless of their past. Let us look at the Caitlin Clark influence from a different angle. Because of the massive attention Clark brings, every other player is getting a huge bump in visibility. For some, like Sophie Cunningham, that has been a total gold mine for their personal brand. For others, like Cloud, it has been a curse. The mistakes that used to happen in front of empty stands are now being broadcast to millions of people. Cloud's terrible advanced stats are not just a secret among basketball fans anymore, they are being discussed by a global audience who wonders why she is still taking up a roster spot. The irony is that Cloud's contract was actually considered a bargain by many league experts at the beginning of the year. On paper, getting a veteran with her championship experience at that price point seemed like a total steal. But as the saying goes, you get what you pay for. If the eye test says she is okay, but the data says she is the worst player in the league, you have to wonder if she is actually helping her team win or just occupying a space that could go to a younger, more efficient player who will not cause a massive PR firestorm every single Tuesday afternoon. Being an activist is one thing, and the league generally supports players who stand up for important social causes. But there is a very thin line between being an activist and just being a constant headache for the front office. Cloud has crossed that line so many times that teams have started to conflate the two issues. They do not want to deal with the nonsense that comes with her, regardless of whether she is right or wrong on a specific topic. At the end of the day, pro sports is a business, and Cloud is becoming a very expensive business expense for any team to carry. The way she has handled the rivalry between the new stars and the veterans has been a masterclass in how to alienate an entire audience. Instead of mentoring the next generation, she is seen as someone who is stoking the flames of animosity for no reason. The fans who came to watch Caitlin Clark are seeing Cloud as the primary villain, and while every story needs a villain, the league does not want one that actively encourages dangerous violence on the court. It is a very dangerous game to play when your career is already on thin ice, and the teams are watching closely. Every team has a nightmare player that they have to manage. We have seen it with various star players and their social media situations over the years, but the big difference is that those players are usually producing at an MVP level on the court. They are worth the extra trouble. When you are an aging guard who cannot shoot efficiently, and your defense is slowly disappearing, you lose the right to be a nightmare. You have to be a professional. Cloud seems to think her past accolades will save her forever, but the modern WNBA has a very short memory for past success. The New York Liberty's decision to move on from her was the first major domino to fall in this saga. They saw the direction the league was heading and decided they wanted no part of the Natasha Cloud experience anymore. It was not just a basketball decision, it was a total culture decision for the franchise. They wanted players who would fit into a professional, championship-caliber environment without the constant threat of a social media blow-up. Since then, she has been playing like someone who knows her time is running out, and the results on the court have not been pretty. We need to talk about the Pisces code, and the strange, cryptic way she communicates with her fans online. It is almost like she is living in a different reality where she is not accountable to her team or her league at all. In a professional setting, that kind of behavior is incredibly exhausting for coaches and teammates. They want to focus on the game plan, not what their starting guard meant by a weird threat about dragging tails. It adds a layer of unnecessary complexity to an already high-stress environment that most teams are trying to simplify as they grow. The physical nature of the league is being debated every single day now by the national media. With the influx of new talent and new fans, the enforcer role is being scrutinized like never before in history. Cloud's insistence on liking the energy of a suplex shows she is completely out of touch with how the sport is evolving. You can be tough without being dangerous to others. You can be competitive without being toxic to the environment. But Cloud seems to think that toxicity is part of her personal brand, and that brand is currently being rejected by the market. If you look at the stats from the start of this current season, the shock of her contract being a bargain has completely evaporated into thin air. She is playing well below the standard of a veteran guard, and the advanced stats are even more brutal than they were last year. She is currently a player who takes high-volume shots at a very low percentage while committing fouls that put her team in the penalty early. It is a nightmare scenario for any coach trying to build a winning culture around a new league identity that values efficiency and professionalism above all else. Her unsigned status during the early part of the year was not a fluke. It was a loud warning from the league. It was the WNBA telling her that her time as a protected veteran was officially over. If she wants to stay in this league for the long haul, she has to adapt to the Caitlin Clark era, which means more professionalism, better efficiency, and a lot less social media drama. But instead of taking the hint, she has doubled down on the very behavior that made her radioactive in the first place. She is playing a dangerous game of chicken with her own professional career. At the end of the day, Natasha Cloud is a cautionary tale for the modern athlete in the digital age. In a world where influence is everything, how you use that influence matters more than ever before. You cannot just be good at your job, you have to be worth the trouble you bring to the organization. As the WNBA continues to explode in popularity across the globe, the players who will thrive are the ones who can balance their passion with a level of professionalism that the new audience expects. Cloud did not hold back, but her refusal to change might just leave her behind.